Hey everyone, welcome to the sixth lecture of AWS Organization and Control Tower series. And in this lecture, we will deep dive into service control policies. I have already covered few of the initial concept of service control policy during the entire series, but I just wanted to cover up service control policies with a dedicated lecture because that's where you will be playing around a lot with the permission boundaries, right? So it's not an IAM policy where you play around within an account, like which resources should access what kind of modules within AWS. It's a service control policy for which you need AWS organization. So it's an organization policy which can be applied to the org, the OU basically within that structure, or you can apply directly to the account. One of an example, I would say it's basically, let's say you have a developers, right? So developer want to build out an EC2 instances for their development, but they don't know what kind of resources, like what type of EC2 instances they should go with. So they might provision R5 a 4x large for their testing purposes, for their development purposes, but that is not the requirement, right? We can do the same job with T3x large or T3 large, right? Or medium as a matter of fact. So based on that, what we can do with the help of service control policy, we can restrict the permission boundaries for that developer account, for that OU structure itself, that hey, you can't provision apart from T3 large or T3 medium or whatever it is. Apart from those instances, you can't provision any other instance type. So what that will do, that will help you to reduce the cost of your organization, because that's where developer don't understand much, sorry for that, but they don't understand much regarding what kind of or what type of EC2 instances they should go with. So most of the time they select the higher instance type and then they start their development, and for that organization have to pay for it, right? I have seen this multiple cases. So let's go through few of the pointers of service control policies. So service control policy, we call them as SCPs as well, are the type of org policy that you can use to manage permissions in your organization, right? So as I mentioned, it can be applied to your org, so you can control everything from a centralized management console. SCP also offers a central control over a maximum available permission for your accounts in an org. SCPs help you to ensure your accounts stay within your organization access control guidelines. That's where the central control comes into picture. Centralized security, centralized policy management, everything comes from your organization. That's where it's very helpful, right? Now, SCPs are available only in an organization. So, to use SCP, you have to create AWS organization. SCPs are not available if your organization has enabled only the consolidated billing feature. So, that is an important factor to note over here, right? SCPs alone are not sufficient for granting permission to your accounts in an organization. So you have to make a combination out of it. SCPs are more towards controlling your policy structure for organization, right? So it's not necessary that you can control everything from one place. You have to deal with some sort of local policy management as well. That's what permission boundaries within an IAM falls, right? That's where you can control. No permissions are granted by SCPs, right? Again, SCP defines the guardrails, set the limits on the action that account administrator can delegate to an IAM user and roles in that affected account. So in general, basically, these are the set of rules, right? Where you can set the permissions of your AWS resources. For example, again, you don't want somebody to play around with the AWS config rule that is created by AWS Control Tower. So obviously we have created that policy. AWS Control Tower created that policy, and we saw that in our previous lecture, the entire demo, right? There is a policy created that S3 bucket cannot go public. The public read access has been prohibited. So you don't want somebody to edit that policy or edit that AWS config rule and make that S3 bucket to public. That will be a problem. That's where a lot of data resides, and we don't want our data to hack around, right? So that's where these service control policies are very handy. Now, again, you might got a fair amount of idea why SCP is required, because when you're, let's say, when your organization is growing a lot bigger and you need to manage more accounts, right? So for a different teams or a different group, it's very hard to maintain. You have to go to each of the account, then assign the IAM policies, permission boundaries, users and roles and everything, right? Because IAM allow you to control users and role within an account, but it's harder for us to manage if we are, playing around with multiple accounts. If, let's say, if we have 100 of accounts or 200 of accounts, then controlling everything from IAM is not possible. I mean, you can still control it, but that is a very time consuming process, because one account differ from other will differ from the third account. So that's where SCP comes into picture, and the biggest benefit is that you have a better control over that particular account, and who can use what kind of resources. Or for example, I have given a permission to a developer, you can use only EC2 instance type T2 micro. You cannot provision any other instance type, right? But I have given a permission to a system administrator to that account, hey, you can provision T3 large or R5AX large, because that's where you can get more understanding who is doing what kind of work within SCP, right, within your organization. That's where SCP controls most of it. But again, SCP alone will not help to gather everything within an organization. You have to play around with the integrations with IAM policies, roles, users, and the access of those resources, right? Okay, I hope now this clears a lot in terms of the concept of service control policies. I have showed the demo as well while doing the AWS organization, how you can create and everything. We will be doing the demo as well over here. And at the last, I will go over a few of the best practices model with SCPs. So these are the few service control policies that I have gathered. One of them is prevent your member accounts to leave an organization. So obviously, let's say if you have any organization, within an organization you have multiple accounts, but if you have given a permission for that member account to leave that organization for whatever no reason is, right, then it will be a problem for us to manage the entire control policies, entire guardrails, and even the consolidated billing. I can't manage the security if somebody by mistake click on leave organization. They don't know about the functionality and they just thought, hey, let's leave the organization where it is required. So in that case, it become problem. That's why this policy will help us to deny that particular action of leaving the organization. So that's one important policy. Second policy is block service access to the root user. So it's never recommended to use a root user to do all sorts of operations within your account. So that's why we try to remove the access of a root user or restrict the access of the root user as much as possible in your workload environment or basically in your organization. So this policy will help to deny the action on EC2 instances. As so again, if you want to do it for all, you can select it. I'm just giving an example for an EC2 instances. Let's not give an access to the root user. So this will help us to restrict the access or block the service access to the root user. Another policy for us is prevent user for disabling AWS config or changing its rule. That's something I was talking about, right? So we are doing a deny and then delete the config rule, delete configuration recorder, delivery channel, stop the configuration recorder. So this is one set of policy that will deny. Again, service control policy is not applicable only for deny. You can also allow certain sort of rules as well. It's not applicable only for deny, just remember it. Require Amazon specific EC2 instance type. So here again we are denying that apart from EC2 this instance type, you cannot use any other instance. Sorry, one sec. We are denying the fact require a micro type instance. Yeah, so you can only use T2 micro. Then prevent users for deleting Amazon VPC workflow log. So workflow log from the network perspective is always important, because that's where we understand from where what kind of request is coming. Now, if you're not aware of the VPC workflow log, Then there is a detailed lecture on VPC workflow log on my channel. The entire series of networking is there, so you can go through that as well. Prevent any VPC that doesn't already have an internet access from getting it. So again, important factor for us, we should deny all those accesses in terms of the network part where you already have an internet access but you don't want it for any other people to change it, right? Okay, now let's jump to our AWS management console. We will be doing some sort of demo. Now this is the same AWS control tower account. I'm into organization. As you can see, I created the tools OU in my last lecture as part of the demo of AWS control tower, and there is a workload account, right? So we will go to policies on the left, and there is a service control policies. Let's click over here. These are the default policies, not the default one. I mean, these were get created by AWS control tower, and we have seen that. For us to create a policy, what we can do, click on create policy. I'm into my master account basically. Click on create a policy. Let's give this policy name as let's do shield. So SHIELD. Shield is one of shield deny. Shield is one of a firewall service that resides in your web application. It basically a firewall service which protects you against the DDoS attack. Shield standard and Shield advanced. Shield standard you can play around with it, but Shield advanced is more of a subscription model where you have to pay $3,000 a year. So I'm not going to do that for sure. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to deny the access on the member account basically. Let's say workload account. We'll be able to see whether we'll be able to access Shield Advance or not. Now you can create a policy. If you know how to create it, you can just write it down, or if you want to play around with the GUI, we'll search for Shield. Let's click all actions, and in the resource I'm going with all the resources because I don't have Shield activated on my account. So now create a policy. So the policy creation, the SCP policy creation is very simple. Now as you can see, these are customer managed policy because got created by your AWS control tower. Now in order to associate this policy, what you have to do, select that policy, click on action and click on attach. Here I want to do it for sandbox. Let's select that, and again you don't, because I have only one account. Let's say if I don't want to apply the policy at the OU level, I can do it at the account level as well. Okay, so as of now it's having only one account. Let's apply that. Click attach policy. Policy has been attached, and this is a deny to Shield service, right? So let's go back over here and we'll log into our workload account. So first let's do one thing. Let's go to the audit account. Click on the management console. So once you go to any other account, the previous login will get logged out. So I'll be logging out from the master account where I have done the configuration. Now here, if I search for SHIELD Shield, WAF and Shield is the service basically. Let's see. So I'm into the audit account. I should be able to see everything over here. Getting started. So upper part is WAF. WAF is your web application proxy or firewall, sorry, web application firewall. And Shield is more of your DDoS kind of a firewall service. It's all applicable at your ALBs, application gateway. There are like certain 5 or 6 kind of resources that you can protect with Shield. So as you can see, status is incomplete, but I'm able to see it, right? I can access it. This is global in nature. Now let's navigate to the workload account. I showed you the account where I haven't applied the policy, but let's go to workload account where I have applied the policy to deny the access. Let's see how that looks like. By the way, I hope you are able to understand the concept in the demo of control tower, and you might have done that as well. So because I'm getting a feedback that you guys got the understanding of control tower and rest of the other concept that we covered, like organization and landing zone. Okay, I'm into shield. Let's click on get started. As you can see, fail to load the resources because it's having access denied with an explicit deny to the service control policy. I can't even subscribe or do anything over here, right? Because we have done a deny to this account. So that's one level of one kind of an example. Let's go back again to our management console, the root account, and whatever we had in our example, we'll try to do that as well. So let's create a policy where we will deny to leave the organization. So let's go to AWS org and policies, service control policies, click on create policy, deny leave org, right? Now I can just do copy paste, create policy, policy is created. Where is that? Okay, now click, you can also edit it once that is done. And another way of attaching the policy, so go inside that SCP in the target section and click attach. Again, I'm going to, so last time I did it for sandbox, right? So let's do it for audit. So I did it for the org, but now within not the org, organization unit, now within security OU we have two accounts. So I am applying the policy specific to the account. So click on attach policy. That's done. So that was an audit account, right? Let's go to the target audit account. Let's navigate here and click on management console. So there is an explicit deny of leaving the org. So we'll not be able to leave the org from here. This is a member account. Okay, let's go to AWS organizations. Click on leave this organization. Leave. As you can see, you don't have permission to access this resource. So that's how the SCP works, and how you can attach it to the OU level, how you can attach it to your account level as well. So I hope this clears a lot in terms of how you play around with the policies. Let me just cover last part of this slide, basically the best practices. So as part of the SCP best practices, what you should do: deny the root user access, prevent the takeover attack using the root user account. So obviously if your root account got hacked, then all your accesses and everything will go away. Enforce MFA, require MFA to enable for a specific action. So MFA is your multi-factored authentication. One of an example, so when you log into your AWS account, you can create a MFA on top of that. That is kind of an RSA token. Then you give the six digit generated number, basically that valid for I believe 20 to 30 seconds, and every time it changes after that. So that is important to apply to your member accounts. Then protect, monitor, audit, security tool, prevent users from disabling or modifying any of these configurations. So these are only controlled by your administrators. Don't allow the specific account users or any not specific account users, so for example developer accounts, right, or QA account. So don't give permission to those people to play around with these uh, you know disabling all these or modifying all these policies. Restrict the regions allowed in your org for geographical proximity or regularity needs. So this is another important factor. So if like you'll be playing around for the dev, I don't think so different regions are required, because once you create resources, you hardly remember where I have created those resources. So that's why I left that across, and I'm paying for that. And I have done this by myself few years back when I was playing around with AWS a lot. I left NAT gateway and I had to pay a long, I mean, it's a big number, I would say, that I paid to AWS just for doing my demo and everything for my client. I forgot, then I have to pay, right? So that's why all those restrictions needs to be in place. Restrict the EC2 AMI sharing and visibility. Prevent the AMIs from being public or shared with other AWS account. Now, this is again kind of a contradictory. You can share with the other accounts if there is a business need, right? Because if customer is requesting an AMI for that, then yes, you can do that. But for your local users within your org, you should be knowing that who is responsible for sharing all those AMI with the customer. So give access to those users instead of everybody, and obviously restrict everything from the public side. So that's what SCP is all about. I hope now you got the clear understanding of everything of this entire series, how to play around with the policies, security best practices, control tower, organization, landing zone, lot of multiple account strategy, right? So everything we have covered. In next few lectures, not few lectures, I would say next lecture will be the last lecture for this entire series, where we will be covering few of the differences, more of a theoretical part, right? But the demo part is all done, and I hope everything is quite clear. So place out a comment in comment section if you're facing any issue. I'll be there to help you. Have a nice day. Bye bye.